disperse immediately. If you are in the middle of the street, you are lawfully assembled. You will be subject.
April 4th, 1968.
Wrote the magnificent words
A day that will forever go down in civil rights history as the day part of a dream died. April 4th. 4 days after the Kerner Commission forewarned of dangers to come. The day that MLK was assassinated, and the day that historians believe sped up the passing of the 1968 Civil Rights Act, also known as the Fair Housing Act. Although not nearly as famous as the popular 1964 Civil Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act ended housing segregation and integrated communities all across the country. It ensured equal access to housing for all people, regardless of race, and it eliminated divisive tactics like redlining, where people were historically denied opportunities to live in certain neighborhoods because of their race or ethnicity. By many standards, the FHA served its purpose well, or at least it might have if it had not been ignored by communities that refused to open the gates to their predominantly white neighborhoods. Furthermore, integrating communities wasn't a priority for the President of the United States at the time, Richard Nixon. According to a report conducted by the Poverty and Race Research Action Council, Nixon was so concerned with keeping his white suburban constituency happy that when advised to link federal aid of states to suburban racial integration, he wrote, "I am absolutely opposed to this. Knock it in the head now." Which brings us back to the beginning, the 2014 and 15 social riots that have shaken communities like Ferguson, Missouri, and Baltimore, Maryland. City of Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum says the riots of today could be linked to the housing segregation woes of the 60s.
As we think about the Fergusons and Baltimores of the world, access to housing is a component of many of the conditions, the frustrating conditions that have been allowed to be persistent in those places. What does the employment environment look like in those places? What are the criminal justice laws and policies governing those areas? What is the poverty rate? It's multi-layered.
Some would argue that the historically low-income minority-majority communities haven't changed much.
Back in the older days where that fear, and if you dare to say anything, there's going to be retaliation. It's just, that is what South Georgia has to deal with, and it has not gone away. It's, despite all the information is out there, all the efforts that you do, that stigma still exists. A lot of times where a lot of nonprofits and developers coming together to put up affordable housing and trying to desegregate, spread things out in different times. A lot of people, the existing homeowners or landlords will kick against it, because as soon as you use the word low income, that's a stigma.
While things may look the same in multiple communities across the country, city officials remind us that HUD has made significant strides in its enforcement of the FHA.
Is that we probably would not have the type of diversity that we want to see. Also, there would be some folks who would not be able to afford a house if we didn't have an FHA.
HUD is really putting in a lot of time, a lot of focus on fair housing. They've set up fair housing commissions.
It's our job to ensure that the public is aware of their rights as it relates to fair housing. That's the number one thing. And the other thing is to go back and monitor that those who are providing housing are doing so in a fair and equitable manner.
Practically at least once a week we get emails from HUD of cases that have been solved that has been ongoing probably for the last year or two, and they are really paying attention to what organizations, lenders, developers are doing when it comes to fair housing.
So I think that HUD provides some excellent services because for some people it affords them the privilege of owning a home.
The Housing and Urban Development Governmental Agency has come a long way from rewarding housing segregation, but many would agree that we still have a long way to go.
I would say not only must we have an important emphasis on making sure housing stocks at diversified levels are available and are available in all parts of a city, we also have to make sure that the people who are living in these communities have access to shelter, security, safety.
We know that the education that you received impacts where you live, because if you're not getting a good education, that means that you are not going to be able to get a good job, which means you can't afford the housing that maybe is someplace else.
A lot of the lower lying counties does not have choices. Job creation is going down the drain. There's not a lot of jobs, so they can't afford a lot. They are going to be subject to the discrimination because it's such a small, limited amount of affordable housing.
Even the types of food you're eating, because if I'm living over here where they don't have the stores, then maybe I'm not getting all of these fresh fruits and vegetables that I could get if I lived on the other side of town where they do have stores aplenty. Where you live impacts everything.
Whatever the condition might be where you live, diversified, not so diversified, affluent, more impoverished, that the families, the neighbors, the community itself has to really rally to make sure that just because you may be growing up in poverty, that your destiny, that your future can be greater.
Just to save his own. Have pity on those whose chances grow thinner, for there's no hiding place against the kingdom's foe. Oh, people get ready, there's a train a-coming. You don't need no baggage, you just get on. Hear the diesels humming, and you don't need a ticket, you just thank the Lord one more time. People get ready, there's a train a-coming. You don't need no baggage, you just get on board. All you need is faith. You just thank the Lord. Come on, people get ready. All you need is faith. All you need is faith. You don't need a ticket. You just thank